And then here, you start with filtrate here, and you end up with filtrate here as it passes through here. And what comes out of here, if we could you know, imagine that this is the end of the road, that's urine. And that's if you are in water balance. This is about 1.5 liters of urine per day, if you're in water balance, right? And the urine osmolarity should be exactly what the osmolarity of the body is, because we don't need to conserve excess water, eliminate excess water, conserve ions, eliminate ions. We're in balance, right? So if you're in balance, kind of what goes in is what's got to come out. The volume's different, right? But you're in balance. So this would also be about 300 milliosmolar here. Now we know sometimes that, okay, I'm not the only one I know, but do you look before you flush? Have we had this conversation before? Yes, you should. If you don't, you should. Especially urine, also. And you know, sometimes it's a small volume, it's very dark, it's got more of an ammonia smell to it because it's very concentrated. Other times it's very dilute, right? It's very clear and colorless, and doesn't have much of an odor to it, and that again is because it's pretty dilute. And that's related to your water conservation state, right? If you are dehydrated, if you went out and you played a bunch of tennis and you sweated a lot, over the next several hours your urine, the amount, if you do produce it, is going to be very small amount, and it's going to be highly concentrated. Right? That's because you're conserving water. On the other hand, if you just sat there and you downed, you know, a couple liters of water, and if you are already in homeostasis, eventually you're going to have to eliminate that, and your urine is going to have a large volume of urine, and it's going to be less concentrated. So we know this number can change. Sometimes this would be isoosmotic urine. If you're dehydrated, you would make a low volume of hyperosmotic urine. And if you are overhydrated, you would make a large volume of hypoosmotic urine. So how do you do that is the question. And you do that because of the structure of the kidney and the fact that the loop of Henle limb here passes down into the medulla, comes back up out of the medulla, and then the collecting tubule urine has to run back down through the medulla through it down. Okay. And the other thing to remember is we said kidneys were salty. So here's why they're salty. Here's how they're salty. So to tell this story, where I want to start, I can't really start at the beginning to tell the story. I want to start right in the middle. So I'm going to start right here at this hairpin loop is where I'm going to tell my story, start my story. And what's going to be important here are the movements of two things in particular, sodium and water. So I'll do, how about green? So, sodium pumps. That's what I'm drawing here. I'm drawing some sodium pumps. Okay. And if you'll notice, there are more sodium pumps further down, closer to this hairpin in the loop of Henle. As you come out of this ascending limb, there are fewer and fewer sodium pumps. Well, it's pretty easy to imagine how the body could regulate that, right? These sodium pumps are in cells. Cells can overexpress them down here, so you have a lot of sodium pumps in the membrane here, and not very many up here. Piece of cake. That's fine. So, you okay with that? Active transport uses ATP to pump sodium. So we're starting down here with urine, with filtrate. Let's start down here in the hairpin loop. That is 300. I'm not going to put the units on here, but that's 300 milliosmolar. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Not true. So let's do this. If we have pumps right here, and the pumps are pumping out sodium, the sodium is going from the filtrate here out into the interstitial spaces around the building. You got that? Is that okay? So we're pumping a lot of sodium out. So let's just draw some arrows here. These arrows are implying that there's sodium coming out. Now, as a result of this sodium being pumped out here, we are creating a condition where there's a high concentration of solute out here, right? Now, normally if I pump sodium out, what would water want to do? Go with it, right? Pump sodium out, water's going to go. But this is the ascending limb, so it's impermeable to water, so we can pump sodium out, but what stays inside? Water. Now, because there are more pumps down here, and more sodium to pump down here than there is up here, I'm creating a situation where there is a high concentration of sodium out here, right? And a relatively lower amount of sodium up here. Does that make sense? You okay with me on that one? So we have established the fact that there is a gradient in the interstitial spaces, interstitial fluid in the spaces around the loop of Henle that has a high concentration of salt near the apex of the limb of the loop of Henle and a low concentration of salt closer to the top. Is that all right? And we can put some numbers on it. So let's put some numbers on it here. I'll do them over here on this side. You know, they're all over the place, so I'll do it over here. This is actually ends up being really hyperosmotic out here. That's about 1,200 milliosmolar there. So we can come up and that's about 1,000, 800, 600, 400, 300 or so. So this is our gradient, our salt gradient as we move down through. So what part of the nephron was responsible for establishing the salt concentration gradient in the medulla so that it's of a lower salt gradient by the cortex and a higher salt gradient down here at the plateau? What structure established that? The loop of Henle. In particular, what part of the loop of Henle? The ascending limb, because it was impermeable to water. Okay? So you get, does everybody get that how we established this gradient? Piece of cake. Okay, now let's go back up here. So I just established the gradient first to show you that there was a gradient. So now we've got this filtrate coming in through here, 180 liters of it, passing down into here. And it is about, it's isoosmotic with the body's fluid, so it's about 300 milliosmolar. Now this descending limb, because when this comes in, it's going to go down here, right? Now this descending limb is permeable to water. You okay with that? It's thin, it looks permeable to water. So right here, as this comes down in here, it's 300. So I've got 300 here, 300 here, nothing's going to happen, right? But as it moves, as soon as it moves down in here, I've got 300. What is it over here? Something more than 300. So what's water going to do? Water's going to come out. Now it's going to be something greater than 300, let's say, just for sake of an argument, 400. Right? Getting more concentrated, right? But now, as it continues to move down through here, if it's 400 right here, what is it out here? Something more than 400, right? So more water comes out there. So now it's 500 or whatever. And as it moves down here, that's more than 500. So more water comes out here. Now it's 600.